The time is just gone 8:22 a.m. as we proceed with this morning's edition of News and Views. And we start off this morning looking at 16 days of activism. And about 150 people protested against gender-based violence outside of Parliament on Saturday morning. And we join on the line this morning by Venetia Orgill, who is the ambassador for South Africa Women Fight Back. Venetia, good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning to you. Morning, listeners.
Well, now,
how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good, thank you.
Right now, obviously, we've kicked off last week with 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and children. And this protest that had taken outside Parliament, and when one looks at obviously on a personal level for you, obviously this protest meant a lot, and we are led to believe that you went in and you were obviously attended the protest wrapped in chains and police tape, and more importantly, because you personally have had or been witness to gender-based violence in your own family, which included your two grandchildren.
That's right.
Okay. Now, I suppose that's the reason why you obviously feel very, very strongly at this point in time, and this protest, which is important because it's not only about the violence, but it's also about being the perpetrators or bringing the perpetrators to book. And this is one of the issues that you've asked for, is the abolishment of bail.
That's right. It is something we feel strongly should not happen, is for perpetrators to get bail. Yet the courts feel they're not guilty until found guilty. Yet the victims live with this, that they have been violated for the rest of their life. So yes, we feel, and we're going to keep on fighting for bail to be denied and sentenced to be very harsh, life without any parole.
Now, obviously, this is as a result of your grandchildren as well. And I've seen the article, and it speaks about 3 years later, court cases are still ongoing, and the victims still suffer, and the perpetrators, obviously, some of them known to people, to communities who roam around and still walk freely.
That's right. This is what's happening in our case. My case was reported in 2018 Feb. I mean, we at the end of 2020 already. One of my eldest granddaughters on stand and under oath since 2019 in October. We as family cannot even speak to her. So can you imagine the trauma she's going through? She cannot discuss it with anybody because she's under oath. And every time is postponement above postponement. And, you know, they can change their lawyers like they want to. They can ask to come to work in Mitchell's Plain. And if we deny that, the courts tell us that we cannot deny someone to find a job. Their life goes on and the victim's life stands still.
Now, obviously, we've seen even the President Cyril Ramaphosa raise this issue. And I recall it was last year sometime where he even met with protesters. Do you think the government is doing enough?
No, Cyril Ramaphosa, our president, came out on the 5th of September, made 16 promises, not one has been fulfilled. So obviously, government is not doing enough. Nobody in any government department is doing enough for our women and children who's being raped and murdered and kidnapped and gruesomely being hurt. Nothing is really being done. You know, the little bit of justice we are seeing, if I look at Megan Kramer, if I look at Jesse Hess, the cases was just once more postponed to May next year,
Mm,
May 2021. It's ridiculous. When do families get closure? Yet
exactly.
victims can get bail.
Mm, I agree with you. Now, obviously, that was the one issue with regard to refusing bail or abolishing bail for sexual offences. The other issue was the National Register for Sex Offenders to be made public, to be named, and to be shamed.
That's right. That's one of our calls that we are asking for, to be go onto a sexual offenders register, to be named, to be shamed, so people can know who lives in their area. The courts is now saying, if they do give you bail as a perpetrator, um, if you live in Mitchell's Plain, the court tells you you can't be in Mitchell's Plain. So now you're going to Athlone area. Athlone area, nobody knows you're a perpetrator. So nobody's going to be, oh, it's a new neighbor. Oh, it's my family living with me. Oh. So nobody in that area is going to know they got a rapist or a murderer living right next door to them.
Mm.
And
And I
this
think
is,
I think this is obviously problematic, and especially when one looks at many instances. And I suppose in your line of work, Vanisha, being the ambassador for SA Women Fight Back, is there are cases that we know of, but there are many cases that go unreported. And I suppose in your part of the world, you'll find that there are many, many instances where a lot of these crimes are being committed against women, sexual offences, and the like that go unreported. So it's actually a very, very scary thought when one thinks that there may be many people who are suffering in silence right now.
yes, there is. I'm actually just busy personally counseling two women. One was raped 20 years ago. Um, in another country. Yet she's a South African. And nothing gets done about these cases. You find them young girls going to travel abroad, and they go and work, and things like this happen to them. Then I've got another woman who just, she's too scared to go forward. She's too scared to go forward to say, I have been raped. So yes, I'm trying to get both of them to a point where they would say the perpetrator needs to come to book, for
Now,
them to get closure.
interesting that you say counseling these women. Do you think, in terms of support for women who are victims of gender-based violence and abuse, is there enough support? Is there sufficient support for these women?
I don't think so. Firstly, I love to speak about myself, um, what happens in my personal life, and as my grandchildren went for counseling, on one occasion at court, I had to travel from here to Wynberg Court, and one question posed to them in the rooms: did you enjoy it? Now, how the heck do you ask a child, did you enjoy it? My granddaughter came out. She said to me, Oma, I will never go into these rooms again. This question was posed to me. I didn't even feel like, because I'm so livid that I might just get my anger out at the wrong person. So, yes, there's lots to be done to find our victims. And I don't like to call them victims. I like to call them survivors, because when I look at my grandchildren, they are surviving. They are survivors, and they're strong. So, yes, there's very little help for them out there. The
Well,
counselors need a lot of training still. To compassion needs to come into training rooms.
now, just looking at the protest action that had taken place on Saturday, have you handed over a memorandum? Have you made certain demands? And what was the response to your protest?
Look, I must be honest. I had another engagement, so we had a memorandum that was going to be handed over. by the founder of the organization, Bronwyn. And we had quite a good turnout. We would have loved more. Um, I work with homeless people. Some of them popped around to see if their transgender groups was there, which, another thing is not all groups come out. So we don't know the big impact it has. Last year, 5th September, when we had this massive march in Cape Town, it was all because we lost 3 women in the same month of August. That they had this. Everybody was crazy. Everybody was enough is enough. Everybody had to come to show their anger, their hurt, whatever. But it's died down. And we women need to really not let it die down. Seriously, we shouldn't give government any grace to be quiet about gender-based violence. We shouldn't at all. It should be an ongoing thing all the time. But, people have lives. People feel they're doing their little bit, but it's not big enough for government to see, listen, we need to pull up our socks and do something about gender-based violence. If we look at that one mother and her 5 kids that was butchered last week, that's so sad. And thank God they found him just before he left the country. Imagine that perpetrator, that person got away. We would have had another cold case, another woman and children being murdered, and nobody brought to book.
Well, Venetia, thank you for that and for coming on this morning and talking with us here on Salam Media. We wish you all the best, and please take care.
Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you for having me.
Venetia Orgill joining us this morning about the protest action against gender-based violence that took place on Saturday in Cape Town.